Alright, cool. So yeah, what I'm doing here today is I'm showing you guys the results from a couple of my different DNA uploads. So this one is FamilyTreeDNA. So my FamilyTreeDNA results are right here, lining up with Ancestry, pretty much 92% African. And then of the African percentage, most of that was West African. So that's pretty cool. And then East Central Africa and then South Central Africa were low percentages as well. And then also with that there, let's see here, with the European, I got the British Isles over here. So that's kind of cool. If you zoom in a little bit there, it's the UK area, Ireland. So yeah, that's pretty neat there. And then North Africa, I was 2%, which they said was Middle Eastern. So more in the Morocco, Tunisia area, which is also pretty neat because my ancestry didn't really show any Middle Eastern percentage. Over to my ancestry results here. Yeah, so if I go to my ancestry results, so this is my ancestry results here. So I was 53% Nigerian, which is pretty cool. And then Cameroon, Congo, 11%, Mali, 7%. And then the trace regions were Senegal at 6%, Africa Southeastern Bantu, Ivory Coast Ghana, Africa South Central Hunters Gatherers, Benin Togo, and Africa North. The Nigerian percentage is pretty crazy. Being an African American, you don't really expect to have that high of a percentage from one area. And you can see like the native range here, it's about 31 to 71% is within this bar, and I'm like right in the middle with most natives there. Cameroon, Congo is also really cool. That one's very close to Nigeria, so I'm sure, back in time before there were borders here, this was all just like one landmass, and then people kind of intermingled. So that's pretty neat. The Mali did shock me quite a bit, just because that's a little further from the other areas, I would say, but also very close in itself as well. And all these regions are like right on the west coast of Africa, just lining up with the family tree DNA results, with the West African results. So that's pretty cool. They kind of have the same, I guess, DNA sample in the same area, which is neat. So yeah, those are my ancestry results. And then Ancestry also said I was 6% European, and Family Tree had me at 7%. So I guess that's pretty accurate as well. And then they said I was Ireland and Great Britain, which is also, let's see here, the UK area as well. So that also lines up with what FamilyTreeDNA said, the British Isles right over here, and the United Kingdom and Ireland, Scotland. So very close there. And then also, let's see, they say 1% caucus. But yeah, the ancestry, or sorry, the family tree DNA test said I was 2% European rather than the Caucasus. So that's kind of, or sorry, 2% Middle Eastern rather than the Caucasus, which is pretty interesting. Not sure where that kind of differentiates at. Upon my research here, I also wanted to do a little more digging. So what I did was I went to DNA.Tribes, and I wanted to basically run what my DNA.Tribes results would be here. So yeah, let's pull that up. So this is DNA.Tribes, and with DNA.Tribes I did this on the 1st of this month, and I wanted to just see exactly what tribes I lined up with in Africa, because after I did the first initial these two tests, and did the ancestry and uploaded to FamilyTreeDNA, I also wanted to find out like what tribes in Nigeria, in this West African region do I relate to, because these percentages are pretty high, I would say, for just being a African American, having parents who are African Americans, grandparents are African Americans. As far back as I can remember, my family were African Americans, mainly in Texas. So, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to do a little more digging about. So I did DNA.Tribes, and DNA.Tribes is pretty interesting. I'm not positive as far as how reliable of a source it is and the information that it gives there, but I did want to share this with you guys also. So this is basically just the table of contents where they tell you, give you the introduction, and then they give you kind of all your results broken down line by line. So here is the admixture analysis continental cores, and basically this just tells you what areas of the world that your DNA resides in, from the greatest amount to the least. And this said that I was Sub-Saharan African 89.4%, North African and Middle Eastern 5.2%. So that was pretty interesting, because Ancestry and FamilyTreeDNA said that I was like 92% African, and 2% Middle Eastern, or a little more Caucasus, 1% Caucasus or whatever. But yeah, this here says that I was 5% Africa North and Middle Eastern, which I found interesting, but mainly Sub-Saharan Africa, which is in that region right there as well. So yeah, I'm definitely Sub-Saharan African, which is, I love West Africa. I think West Africa is really dope, so I'm really proud to be a West African. A little bit of European and Asian and Meridian, Siberian, and South Asian. So yeah. And then this here tells you, let's see, zoom out a little bit. Cool. So this here basically tells you what populations you're closest to. So you can see like right here in where the dot is basically the starting point, and these populations kind of vary by color here. The further out, the further away they match to your DNA. So yeah, I matched the closest to the Sub-Saharan African DNA samples. And then this chart here is pretty neat. Basically what this is, I'll just read it to you guys. This portion of your report summarizes ancestral contributions to your genome for 53 regional genetic clusters identified by DNA.Tribes and illustrated in the map below. More specifically, Table 2 exhibits the combination of regional clusters expressed in percentages that most closely matches your DNA SNP or SNP profile. Alright, so you can see here 1 and 2, which is Africa, Great Lakes, Akabuti, Hadza, sorry if I mispronounced that, Amazonian is number 3, which is over here. So pretty cool, very neat to kind of look at and just analyze, So I thought that was cool. And then this also gives you a regional percentage breakdown here, which it says West African 32.6, Central African 30.2. So I figured that was interesting. West and Central Africa, I'm almost like a mixture of both. So that was pretty cool, because Ancestry and FamilyTreeDNA didn't really give me this kind of breakdown, so I thought that was pretty cool as well. I guess Ancestry kind of did with telling me like Cameroon and Mali, but yeah, that was cool. And then Africa Great Lakes, which is also up there with the other ones. North African still at that 6%, which is consistent with above, and then you got the other trace regions there. And this is very similar to what was there earlier. This is basically the starting point, and then the closest one is where your DNA kind of is the closest DNA match to your DNA sample. So Africa, Great Lakes, and then Central African, and then West African are all pretty close there. North African is a little far off the ways there. And then this here is my favorite portion. It says population admixture, native and Jewish populations. This portion of your report summarizes the results of admixture analysis for identifying potential contributions to your genome for individual native and Jewish populations around the world. So basically this breaks down the percentages of the people that you match, and I was the closest match to the Yoruba people of Nigeria, 87.4%. I thought that was pretty crazy, having such a heavy load in one place. I've seen a few other tests where people have it a little more, balanced and spread out there. The second one was the Sahrawi, and that was 6.4%. Basque, Spain, and the Luya, Kenya, and Makia, Madagascar, the Wa, Dogon, West Africa, Yimbe, and South Morocco. So yeah, I'm closest to the Nigerian people, and this here is like basically out of 10 times when they mix your DNA, these are the results they get out of all of your admixture results. And these were the combinations here. And this here I thought was interesting also, is this is basically with those different groups of ethnic people that you resemble the most in your DNA or closely match. You can see the starting point, and the Yoruba people are extremely close there. Then you got a few of the other tribes like the Igbo of Nigeria, and the Bamoun in Cameroon, and then also the Yimbe people, the Luya, Kenya, and then the Sahrawi people. I thought it was interesting that the Igbo wasn't mentioned second, because they're pretty close, and the Bamoun Cameroon people also. And this just basically shows you where your DNA resides the most, is the darker spots on the map, and then it gets lighter and lighter as it goes out until it eventually turns to blue. This map here basically shows you around the world, like position wise, how much DNA you share with people around the world on the map. So it's kind of labeled here, and it kind of goes up in numbers. See, I'm very far from some of these people in some of these different regions of the world. But this is mainly European populations in your genome database. So yeah, that will make sense since I'm mainly African. And these are Caucasus Mountains populations. So still pretty far off. Got a couple in the high hundreds of 174, a couple in the 300s. So that's interesting as well. It's crazy because some of these places I've actually never even heard of before. This is Middle Eastern populations, which I thought was interesting. I'm a lot closer with, which makes sense because it's, closer to Africa, so that would make sense. So it's like 76, 87, 92. So that's pretty cool. 82. Very interesting stuff here. Egyptian, Yemen. A lot of, low numbers there, which is pretty cool to see. And this one is African populations in DNA.Tribes database. So as you can see here, shows the African map, which is, almost all of them are under 100, if not all of them, which I thought was super fantastic. You can see this dark red one here is Nigeria, and then 2 is right next to it, Cameroon, I'm assuming, and then 5 over here, and then it gets into the Great Lakes here, so that's pretty cool. South Africa, pretty low numbers, 23, very interesting, man. Very interesting stuff. And then you can see here as the closest population of people, the Yoruba of Nigeria is number 1. The Brong people, Bamoun, Cameroon, the Hausa of Nigeria, the Igbo of Nigeria, the Yembe, the Kaba, Chad. Just a lot of really cool places that I've heard about, but I never really looked too much into. So all this is really exciting, man. Great stuff. And then this portion ranks the similarity of your genome to East Asian populations. So East Asians still pretty high in numbers, in the 400s even. You can see over here, 400s in the low 300s, some 200s, little hundreds, but still pretty far population-wise. I thought it was interesting because these Wa people showed up earlier. I was I think 1% or 2% Wa, which is East Asia, which I thought was interesting. Which could be also the Caucasus. The Caucasus showing up in Ancestry. And then these are, this portion of your report ranks the similarity of your genome to South Malay. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Archipelago populations in our database. When each population is considered independently, each population on the map is labeled with a number expressing its rankings among your population matches. So these are all pretty far away. Indonesia and Canberra. Wow. Tonga. Wow, Samoa. These are North Asian populations, which are really high as well. High 300s, couple lows. Very high though. And then these are South Asian populations, which got a couple low ones in there. So they show you, all these different populations and how your genome kind of sequences or matches with those populations. This is Native American populations, how people always say, family's Native American, but you do have one in the lower hundreds here, which is interesting, but nothing too crazy. Another one in the lower hundreds. A lot of them are higher though. Ecuador, Mexico. And then this one is the diasporic populations in the database. When each population is considered independently, diasporic populations include modern ethnic groups that have migrated or mixed in recent history. Approximately the past 500 years, each population on the map is labeled with a number expressing the ranking among your world population matches. So I thought this was very cool because in the diaspora, outside of this area of Africa, West Africa, but out in the diaspora, you basically get to see what populations you match the most. So mine, being African American, even Haiti, the Barbados, and Jamaica all showed up before African American did. So I thought that was interesting. I'm thinking that my parents may have, or my foreparents may have migrated from South America, or were taken as captives or slaves over to the North Americas, because a lot of them are in Texas. A lot of my family came from Texas, so, and still reside in Texas. So that's interesting because I know that the route from South America, Texas was very close there. So pretty cool. And yeah, so those are my results there from those 3 tests. And thank you guys for watching my different videos here. And take care.